be seated. Saw a few smiling faces, so lunch must have been good today. Okay. Next witness.
State calls William White.
You'll raise your right hand and face the clerk.
Do you swear to tell the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Can you state and spell your name, please?
It's William White Jr. It's W-I...
Bring in the mic a
Oh.
little bit closer to you.
Yes, sir. It's William White Jr., W-I-L-L-I-A-M, W-H-I-T-E, and Jr.
And where do you work?
The Metropolitan Police Department.
What's your assignment with Metro Police?
I'm a detective with the Madison Precinct.
Detective White, what was your assignment back in September of 2017?
I was a detective with the Madison Precinct.
As a detective with the Madison Precinct, did you become involved with this Roy Coons case?
Yes, sir.
What was your involvement?
It was very brief. I worked day shift. B shift was handling the case mostly. My sergeant approached me around 1 o'clock on, I believe, the 15th of September and said that the crime lab, which is upstairs from where we're at Madison, had a package that needed to go to the TBI lab. I went up, met with Rachel Mack. She gave me a form, a cooler. I immediately took that form and that cooler, met with, I believe it was Michael Tuberville with the TBI, and submitted the cooler, the DNA evidence inside the cooler, to the TBI.
Did you go and submit that evidence that you got from Rachel Mack directly to the TBI?
Yes, sir.
Did it remain in the same secure packaging the entire time?
Yes, sir.
Those are all my questions. Oh, wait, 1 second. Just 1 moment. No more questions.
That's all right. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Excuse me. Next witness.
Chris Bowden.
You'll raise your right hand and face the clerk.
Do you swear to tell the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
State and spell your name, please.
Detective Chris Bowden, C-H-R-I-S-B-O-W-D-E-N.
Detective Bowden, where do you work?
Metro Nashville Police Department, Youth Services Division, Crimes Against Children.
And is your job basically to investigate, as a detective, to investigate crimes against children?
Yes, sir.
Were you assigned to that assignment on August 10th of 2017?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been doing that?
I believe about 3 years now, 3 or 4 years.
On August 10th of 2017, were you asked to respond to 1229 Old Dickerson Pike?
Yes, sir.
And was that the crime scene with the victim, Johanna Ortega?
That's correct.
Do you recall about what time of day it was when you arrived?
I don't have the exact time. I know it was already dark, so it was later in the evening.
And when you arrived, there was already a fair number of officers already on the scene, is that right?
That's correct.
When you got there, what did you do?
I met with the command staff that was there and just kind of received a briefing and get instructions about what assistance I could provide with the scene and find out who was the lead investigator and what they would need.
Once you got the briefing, in what way were you asked to assist?
Canvass the area, knock on surrounding doors to the different trailers in the building, and received direction about which way to go, who was going the other directions, and knocking on the other doors,
Okay.
so we would not cross paths and duplicate our efforts.
And did you go with another officer?
I did. It was Detective Sandra Smith.
Was the reason why people got assigned to certain areas just to cover the area? Was there any reasoning behind it other than just to cover the area?
Just to be sure every door was knocked on and everyone was talked to.
Okay. And the first trailer you went to, what was that?
That was going to be C1.
Did you interview the occupants of that trailer?
I did.
Who were they?
If I can review my notes. It's going to be Sheila Gentry, Donna Sharp, and a Billy Mallory, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
And after you interviewed them, which trailer did you go to?
Proceeded there to C3, where we made a considerable amount of effort to try to reach that person, and later found out that he was medicated, unable to answer his door.
Okay. So you did not speak to anybody at that trailer?
Did not, just left my business card there.
Which trailer did you go to next?
From there, we made it to C4.
Who was the occupant of C4?
Mr. Roy Coons.
DC Roy Coons, who you met that day at C4 in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir, I do.
Could you please point him out and identify what he's wearing?
He's to my right. Presumably counsel, he's got on a white dress shirt, button-down shirt, and a gray tie, plaid tie, I think it is.
Did Mr. Coons agree to talk with you?
He did.
Did you notice anything about him?
I noticed he had some tattoos. We talked about that. I explained that I had some tattoos as well. We broke the ice talking about that. He had a dog with him. Talked about his dog. He put his dog up. He talked about where he'd been that day, what was going on, had he seen anything. Same thing we had talked to the other people thus far. Got his information. Same, like I said, same as everyone else.
Okay. I'm going to pass you a disc. If you could just look at this disc and tell me if you recognize it.
I do.
What is that disc?
It is a audio recording from my personal recorder that I had on in my sport coat.
Did you-
at the night?
Is that the same, that's the same conversation you just testified about at C4 with Roy Coons on that day, right?
Yes, sir.
And are those your initials on the disc?
Yes, sir.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of your conversation with Mr. Coons?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, State would seek to introduce that as the next exhibit and to publish it.
All right, number 63. How long is it?
I'm not sure exactly, but it's probably no more than 10-ish minutes. It's
About 8 minutes. 10, is that a word?
not technically, Your Honor. Publishing now what's been introduced as the State's exhibit.
How you doing? How you doing? Doing well. You live here? Yeah. Mind if we talk to you for a minute? Somewhere where there's not everybody listening to what we have to say.
I ain't worried about anybody listening to it. I ain't worried about that.
Is he good or she?
Yeah, he's good. Shut up.
Well, I'd rather not have either or if I could. I sure appreciate that.
Thanks. Thanks.
That'd be awesome. Well, let's come over here and talk over here then. You live here by yourself or you got
My mom and dad.
Okay. All right. Let's start with the basic. What's your name?
Roy Coons.
Roy Toons?
Coons.
Coons.
Like raccoon, but Coons.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's, she's just all right. And that, what's your date of birth?
7/12/72.
Okay. All right. Say your mom and dad's at work?
Mm-hmm. Custodian. My dad's a head custodian on that. Two of middle school.
Okay. What time do they go in?
They usually leave here about 10 after 1.
Okay.
They've been working late. They usually don't get home till almost midnight for the last 3 or 4 nights.
Yeah, school starting back, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that short game is on help and stuff too, so, you know, it's kind of, it's only them two, and it's a huge school.
Yeah, it is.
It's huge, it's upstairs, down.
Yeah.
and everything.
I've been out there before. You been here pretty much all day, or?
I've been in and out, pretty much most of the day. I leave, go get something to eat, grab a pack of cigarettes, something like that.
Before I forget, you got a phone number?
615-606-4119.
So you just kind of in and out, we don't get cigarettes, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm on disability, I don't work or anything.
You think you were here more than gone though today?
Oh, yeah.
Were you outside or inside?
I was usually in the shed, working on stuff,
Okay.
messing with the dog. You know, I like listening to radio and stuff like that.
Have you seen any, anything unusual going on?
No, I talked to the officer earlier, and like I told her, I came out. The only time I really been out in the neighborhood was around 3 o'clock. I went to the mailbox, check her mail.
Mm-hmm.
I came back
Where's your mailbox at here?
right down here on the entrance on the left.
Okay.
Going out. And there were some kids getting off the school bus, you know.
Right.
I think one of them's the daughter that lived right across from us out here.
Okay.
Right across from me, and a couple other kids that lived up there. We walked back up. I came in, and they're watching Street Kings. And my headphones on. I didn't even know y'all was out here. And I came out to walk the dog, and I seen blue lights. I was like, oh Lord.
You didn't see any strange vehicles out here?
No, but I'm gonna tell you, I was walking my dog a little while ago.
Okay.
And the lady up on the hill stopped me and was, you know, concerned about what was going on there.
Yeah, right.
I've been here 17 years.
Right.
Almost 17 years.
Wow.
You know, bad is really happened.
Right.
And she said that she was at the gas station down here, and there was 2 Mexicans down there. He just jumped around. Down there fighting. And one of them was in a truck, a big custom truck or something, and came up this way. So I don't know, you know,
Has that happened today?
yeah, she said it was just not long, you know, this afternoon sometime.
And just for clarity, that female voice we just heard, who is that?
Detective Sandra Smith,
That's the detective who was with you when you were canvassing?
most of the time, she kind of came and went.
Okay.
Did she say it was two men?
Yeah, she said it was 2 men fighting. 2 Mexican, whatever you call them.
Right.
Men.
Right. And did they come and go together in the truck?
She didn't tell me that.
Right.
She just said they was down there fighting. And she was thinking herself, you know, that maybe it was, I thought that the people there at the first term got drunk and got fighting down there or something. You know, I had police officers.
Right.
And she said, you know, I can't really disclose
Right.
information
Right.
about what's going on.
Right.
You know, like I said, I was walking my dog and she was telling me that up there. I don't know who it was or anything, but she did say that they did come in here and the police came in after them or something. I don't know. Just a big custom truck. I didn't say what color or anything like that. I just spoke to her as I walked by, walking the dog.
Right. So they left about 1, but all 3 of you were here prior to that. And you never saw anything unusual, strange, nothing stood out to you, like, I've never seen that guy before?
No, this is
Or anything like that?
This is normal neighborhood people. You know, like I said, if I do come out, it's right here or I go in the shed. I don't really, I say to myself,
Right.
I don't really get involved with a whole lot of people.
Well, if you've been here 17 years, you know what I
We
mean.
talk and stuff.
Right.
And then, Michael over there, I speak to them occasionally.
What's your tattoos on?
Just skulls, cover-ups, eyeballs and stuff. I have a friend that does tattoos and I took the notes, you know, I got
What's that one?
2 characters, it's a skull. I got Woolly Woodpecker, that's my dad's memorial. And he started this one with a gargoyle,
Right.
never got it finished.
Does he do the work, or?
Yeah, my friend does.
I got you.
Yeah, I got quite a few of them. There's other things he never did get finished. That's the dragon's tail, this dragon right here.
I got you. I got a couple of tattoos myself.
Yeah, I
Not
got
that
to
many, but
them, you know.
yeah, they are. They're
It got, you know,
yeah,
I didn't want to quit.
yeah.
He moved back to Dixon, so I had, like I said, I got 4 or 5 or something finished. And he didn't finish before he moved back. I thought he'll get them done.
Well, I'm gonna leave a phone number with you, and if you can think of anything, you give me a call. Maybe if you see something unusual 2 days from now, whatever, some car comes through, looks weird, somebody asking weird questions, anything else, you give me a call,
I sure will.
and
Yeah, I seen him on my phone streaming tonight. those people. You know, I know her, I cut her grass, you know, she gave me that lawnmower over behind the bicycle the other day. I don't know if it was her husband or what's happening, you know. I feel bad, I wanna go down there and, you know, console her and everything, but I know, you know, you're not doing your best.
Right.
I don't wanna offend her.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
She said, you know, her old man or something like that.
Right. Well, just,
Have you seen any of them today?
Who?
Anybody down there?
Residents in the-
No, she's, I think she usually leaves about 9 or 10, maybe goes to work or something, you know, I would usually see her car there between 9 or 10 and maybe late night, you know?
Right.
I'll get out and go get me something to eat or something, she's home,
Okay.
but no, I hadn't physically seen any of them today.
Is there any certain time you cut her grass or just if she has?
On Fridays.
Every Friday?
Yeah. Yeah, she pays me monthly, so I cut it
Every Friday.
Friday. So I'll probably not do that tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, now.
Well, yeah, if I think anything or see anything,
I appreciate it. And nothing's too small or insignificant. Just call, and if I don't answer, just leave me a voicemail.
okay.
Detective Bowden?
Bowden?
Yes, sir, I wrote it down for you. Thank you.
Detective Bowden, those questions that you're asking about timeline for that day and, you know, if he had seen anything, were those, did you have a specific reason to ask those, or were those just kind of being a police officer trying to get good information?
The latter is just gathering the basic facts. That's what I asked everyone else, just what they'd seen, how long they'd been there that day, how long they'd lived there, things of that nature, just gathering the basic timeline of facts and events and any details they might be able to provide.
Where did you go after you left C4?
I left there and I went to C5 and spoke to a resident there, Stephen Weathersby.
And then from there, where'd you go?
Went to C7, spoke with Lauren Armstrong, Michael Hopkins, Carolyn Anderson at that location.
What happened after that?
After that, I was trying to find my direct supervisor, Sgt Toney, and kind of give him a brief because I kind of already made the rounds to all the trailers that were kind of in my scope to knock on the doors to see what else needed and to just give him an update of everyone. And I found him kind of in the center of the main entrance area, close by to all those different trailers.
And while you're talking to Sergeant Turner, did something else happen with Mr. Coons?
Just down from where we were, it was his trailer because they're all kind of close by. There were some other officers speaking with him. I couldn't hear the conversations verbatim. I could tell he was obviously upset, which kind of surprised me because when I left him, you could hear in the recording he wasn't, so I wasn't sure what had happened from the time I talked to him till then. But I observed him not where he was when I left him, which was on, I guess, I don't know if it was referred to his front or back porch, but it was on the opposite side of where he was.
And were you asked to go back over and sort of talk to him again, figure out what was going on?
Yes, I believe, I can't recall what supervisor, is either Sergeant Turner or Lieutenant Mackall, one of the two, I think, suggested since he didn't have any problem with me when I talked to him, he didn't get upset, maybe I had a better rapport, and go talk to him, see if I can calm him down.
Okay. I'm going to pass you a second desk. Did you leave your recorder on?
Yes, I had the voice activated portion on inadvertently when I had changed the batteries out earlier.
What is that disc that you've just been passed?
Part 2, when I went back.
And is that also a conversation with Roy Coons?
That's correct.
And who else is in that recording?
I believe Sergeant Turner.
And have you had a chance to listen to that recording prior to this?
Yes,
And is that your initials on there?
that's correct.
Other than some already agreed upon redactions that have been done, is that a fair and accurate recording of your conversation with Mr. Coons on that day?
Yes, sir.
Can you estimate how long after your first conversation this conversation was?
It was several minutes because we had to walk to trailer to trailer, then interview each person. So, I mean, it was several minutes, but I don't recall, I want to say in the range of 30 to 45, but can't put it because time kind of gets away from you when you're interviewing people, just as you heard him, how long that passed. And then I do recall, I think it was in the last trailer, they had some kids in there. I played with them to get them calm. So it wasn't constantly asking questions. It was doing other things, so it was a little bit of time had passed, but I can't tell you per minute.
This time, Your Honor, asked to admit this as the next exhibit and also to publish it to the jury.
All right.
Thank you, y'all riled up.
Man, look, I don't want to get involved in whatever they got going on down there. I mean, like I said, I'm doing good.
I know. And no one's trying to get you involved in that.
Why are y'all bothering me, man?
I'm just coming to explain and to calm you down. That's the only thing I'm doing.
It's not
That's
it's
it.
making me worse.
Okay.
I'm up to here now.
Well, I'm trying to bring you down.
It's-
Because that's all I'm doing.
Understand you, man.
Just pay you
I've
dog.
enough shit in my life.
And I'm not,
This shit.
and we're not trying to bring anything else with
Why
you.
are y'all keep coming to me for?
Well, I'm just trying to calm you. I'm just trying to calm you
I'm
down.
at home. I know my property. I'm not bothering me. I don't bother nobody. I stay with myself.
Do you still have my phone number?
Yes, I have it. And I told them out there, they repeatedly kept on. I have his number. I know his name and everything.
Right.
And then they come up here and ask me the same questions again.
Right.
Well, they're young cops. They don't know what they're talking about. Come on, man. That man knows what he's talking about.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but what's your name? Just to
Roy
correct that,
Coons.
go ahead.
Roy
Okay,
Coons.
listen, Roy, we're not trying to.
Give you a hard time.
Listen to what I'm saying. If,
See, I'll just crowd.
And that third voice that's come in, is that Sergeant Turner?
That's correct.
What the fuck?
We're knocking on everybody's door.
with cameras in the area we're talking
Come on,
about,
man.
listen, if you had a 12-year-old daughter that was killed, would you or would you not want us to do everything that we possibly can to find out what took
So
place?
what happened down there? The daughter got killed?
She's dead.
I know them, man.
She's dead.
I know them.
She's dead. So,
You can just keep my number,
I got your number.
and it changes.
If I see anything or hear anything in front of
You call.
man, I will.
Okay, that's all I wanted to be sure you had, okay? I'm sorry we got you riled up.
And I don't want to get involved.
I know, but
You know, I
it's,
stay to myself. I don't bother nobody.
It's-
I help everybody
I know.
out around here. I work on their houses.
I had no doubt you
I
did.
mean, even the man that had their home before they did. I worked on that house inside and out, up and down. The trailer over there, I worked on inside, up and down. I cut his grass, my grass, their grass. I even cut her grass. So, I don't sit right there.
I know.
And I don't, no, man, I'm not getting involved in that. I got enough going on.
And the only reason we want to talk to you a little more is because you were home a little more than everybody else.
And like I said, I'm inside most of the time. I don't come out because I know how I am.
Right.
And I get riled up.
Easy. That's why I told you to just sit there and pet your dog.
I just don't want to get involved in it. I mean, like I said, whatever they got going on, and I'm sorry it happened to their daughter or whatever, but whatever they got going on, I don't want to be involved in it.
Okay.
I got enough going on. It's not right, man. Like I said, I'm sitting in front of my car with that neighbor and
Right.
Steve. She walks up and asks me for my information. Well, I'm just getting everybody's information and everything. She never asked me. Nobody else out there.
But we did.
Profiled on me because I had tattoos and stuff, what she was doing.
But we did.
thanks, Roy.
All right. Y'all have this
Just
night.
give me a call, okay?
Good.
Detective Bowden, at any time when you were on the scene, in your perception, did you ever hear any officer ever volunteer any information to Mr. Coons that the victim was strangled or that it involved a rape or attempted rape?
No, there's nothing else to divulge other than what you just heard on that.
Anything else? Those are all my questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Detective, how many police officers were out canvassing that neighborhood?
A lot. I can't even begin to give you a number. There's a lot. I know precinct officers, precinct flex teams, several different specialized units. The unit I'm in, there's a lot.
maybe scores?
I suppose.
How big
I
a-
couldn't give you a number.
How big of a mobile home park is this? Do you know how many units are there?
I do not know how big. I know the little section I was in, and that's about as far. I try to stay in my area and tend to my responsibilities.
So there were a lot of officers out talking to a lot of residents that night.
Correct, sir.
And it's likely that those residents were talking to each other.
I guess you could probably, I don't know. I never saw that firsthand, witnessed them talking to each other. But I mean, it's a neighborhood.
So what other officers may have told other residents you don't know because you weren't involved in those conversations?
Not in the other ones. I only know those trailers that I listed there. That's who I spoke with.
So if other officers had disclosed the nature of the offense down there, you would have no way of
I'm going to
knowing?
object to the question that calls for speculation, Your Honor.
Well, I'm asking if he knows it or not. He either does or he doesn't, it's not speculation.
Well, he asked him a hypothetical, if it had happened, then what?
Well, rephrase your question.
Do you know whether or not other officers, of which there were many, you said, told any of the other residents about what had happened in that trailer?
I do not know.
That's all.
No further questions.
All right, thank you. Excuse-
Yeah.
Next witness.
Sergeant Turner.
Right hand and face the question.
Do you swear to tell the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead and state and spell your first and last name, please.
My name is Tony Turner. First name spelling is Toney. Last name Turner.
Where do you work?
I work with out of the Youth Service Division of the Police Department, Metro Nashville Police Department.
What's your role with the Youth Services Division?
I am one of 4 supervisors that is assigned to the investigative division, our unit, and my responsibility is supervising some of the detectives up there.
And what would your rank or classification be?
I'm a sergeant.
As a sergeant in youth services, how many detectives you might have just said, but how many detectives do you oversee?
I oversee, or at the time I was overseeing about 5 detectives and 3 civilian employees.
Do you know Detective Chris Bowden?
I do.
Is he one of the detectives in the youth services unit?
He is, yes he is.
Were you a sergeant in youth services back in August of 2017?
Yes, sir.
As a part of that role, on August 10th, 2017, did you respond to the scene of the crime at 1229 Old Dickerson Pike?
Yes, sir.
When you got there, what did you do first?
When I originally got there, I actually spoke with the field commander. If I'm not mistaken, the field commander at the time was Captain Mike Alexander, and Don Aaron was also there.
Okay. And then what'd you do next?
Prior to getting there, I actually had made contact with my lieutenant, which was Lieutenant James Jones, make him aware that I'd been notified of the call over on Dickerson Road. And once I got there, got briefed by the field commander and had other detectives en route to the scene.
You asked for some of the detectives from your unit to come to the scene, is that right?
That's correct, because originally when I initially got the page from the dispatcher, they requested us to the scene. So I had, if I'm not mistaken, 4 detectives and had other detectives on standby to respond if we needed them.
What did you do next?
After getting debriefed by the field commander, Captain Alexander, we was told that Madison would be the lead investigated unit that's handling this case. So we became a support element for them.
In your role as a support element for Madison, what did you have your detectives do at the scene?
We started having detectives start basically knocking on doors canvassing the area, speaking to people, locating, running, I think we had one detected, I think it was Detective Smith, Sandy Smith. I had her, for instance, like just pulling the sex registered offender for that for the surrounding area. We just started pulling up, trying to see if there was a call history for the complex. I had even taken on the task to go and interview the manager of the complex once he was identified. So just basic, I would consider just basic,
Just trying to find
any information, right, yes, sir.
You didn't go in the crime scene, right?
No, we did not. I did not go up because we were not the primary unit or investigating unit, no.
So only the Madison detectives who were the lead and the crime scene people were allowed into your knowledge?
To my understanding, yes.
At some point, did you encounter someone named Roy Coons?
I did.
Describe that encounter.
Detective Bowden, I think he was already interviewing or speaking to one of the residents there in the complex. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was speaking to someone in lot number C7, I believe it was. And I had went up, spoke to him, and while I was waiting for him to finish what he was doing, I was standing in the roadway, and where C7 is located, the defendant's trailer was cat-a-corner or adjacent to it. So I was kind of like in the roadway between these trailers. At some point while I'm out there, Mr. Coon basically approached me and started carrying on a conversation with me. He was kind of asking me like, what was going on. I'm trying to explain to him that we're here just doing an investigation. Now a crime is taking place, and we're asking neighbors different questions about what they may have known, what they saw, what they seen, or had any information about what had taken place.
At some point, did you have reason to take notice of a cigarette?
Yes.
Describe where the cigarette was and what made you take notice of it.
He was when he come out of the out of his trailer, or he was walking toward me, I noticed that he was smoking a cigarette. He also was drinking a bottle of water. I can't remember which hand he had which end, but he was smoking it, and at some point he discarded it on the ground.
And what did you decide to do?
At some point later, I had the ID officer, I think it's Officer Warren, Fleet Warren, to come over and to collect the cigarette.
At any time when you were on the scene, did you ever tell either Mr. Coons or anybody that the victim had been strangled or that there had been an attempted rape or a rape?
No. I did tell him, because during this conversation, I did tell him that his next door neighbor, the 12-year-old female, was deceased. And I'm sorry.
That's okay. Did you personally hear any other officer disclose those details that I just mentioned?
No, sir.
Those are all my questions.
Okay.
All right, Ross.
Detective Turner, how many officers were out there that night canvassing the neighborhood?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I don't know exactly how many were out there, but there were quite a few. I do know that there was detectives from the cold case unit. I know there was detectives from youth services. Now, how many Madison had out there, I have no idea. They had quite a few too.
Could be more than 20 out there.
I don't know if it was that high, but it was probably,
More than 10?
yeah, it was more than 10.
Between 10 and 20.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And do you know how many residents were spoken with that night?
No, sir, I do not, but I do know that quite a few of them were spoken to.
And you obviously weren't present for all the discussions between all the officers and all the rest.
No, sir.
Only a few.
Actually, only one, and that was the one that I interviewed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Next witness.
Next witness would be Detective Chad High.
He does the phone pings.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, he's gonna be testifying as an expert.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Hopkins, will you stipulate that he's an expert?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Do you swear to tell the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Joseph High. Last name is High. I'm a detective with Metro Nashville Police Department.
And do you often go by your, I guess, middle name, Chad?
Chad. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You're employed with the Metro Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
For how long?
16 years.
What different positions have you held within the police department?
Started off with patrol, as all of us do. After, I believe, 6 years, I transitioned to South Precinct detective. I was a general detective working shoplifting, assaults, regular, just general type crimes at South Precinct as a general detective for a year, and then I started working homicides in 2010. Worked homicides up until 2015, and then in March of 2015, I transitioned to the Surveillance and Investigative Support Unit, which is a technical assistance unit for the department. We assist detectives throughout all the precincts and Criminal Investigations Division with some of the more technical aspects of investigations, and that can be cell phone forensics, computer forensics, digital audio forensics, and call detail records, which is primarily my responsibility in the unit.
Did you first begin your experience with call detail records and also cell tower location information from those records when you were working as a homicide detective?
I did, yes, ma'am.
And how were they used during your homicide investigations?
Call detailed records are records that we receive from various phone companies, Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile. Two big features or aspects of the call detail records that you can garner information from in an investigation is who and how often a phone number is calling another phone number. It can show a pattern of life of the user of that device. It also shows the cell tower location, which can indicate a geographical area of where that handset could be while it's on a call for service.
Have you had the opportunity to testify as an expert, and how would you phrase what your expertise is?
Call detailed record analysis.
Okay. And have you had an opportunity to testify as an expert in that field in other courts here in Davidson
I
County?
have, yes, ma'am.
Now, if you would, where are call detail records obtained from, and how are they stored and created?
Sure. So the cell phone companies actually maintain and store those records. They're for billing purposes that the cell companies keep up with. So Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, the big four carriers will collect these records, and they keep up with, in these records, let me back up. In these records, your usage is listed, who you're calling, the call logs. They're basically toll records that show you your activity for a certain time period. The difference between regular toll records that you might get in your billing statement and call detail records is that it's a lot more detailed. Whether a call was completed, that's indicated, the duration of the call, whether or not it went to voicemail, who the other caller was that was involved that you were communicating with, whether it's a text message, whether it's data, whether it's an actual voice call, and also the cell tower location, the cell tower that was actually used during that transaction will be noted within the call detail records. Each company reports this out differently. So Sprint is call detail records are going to look different from T-Mobile. T-Mobile is going to look different from Verizon and so forth. But they all come in an electronic format to which we can ingest and look in Excel, an Excel spreadsheet, and kind of disseminate or figure out what's going on within the records themselves. So when we get a request, when I get a request to look at records, I'm sent the records from the detective that they received from Sprint or Verizon, T-Mobile, or whoever the carrier is, and they will send that to me, and I will do my analysis based on the electronic portion or the electronic format of those records.
Other than your analysis of call detail records, were you involved in any other aspect of the investigation into the murder of Johanna Ortega?
No, ma'am. No, I was not.
And are you provided with the full case report or limited details?
Just limited details.
Can you briefly describe what actually a cell tower is and how a cell phone communicates through use of it?
Sure. So a cell phone in a cell tower, they use, it's essentially a two-way radio. It's using radio signals to communicate with the tower, your cell phone. So every time you make a call or send a text or use a data plan, if you're not attached to Wi-Fi at your home or at McDonald's or somewhere like that, you are going over the network, and the way you're doing that is through a cell tower. Once it hits the cell tower, it goes through the base station and goes, eventually makes it out to the public switch and connects to the other party that you are trying to reach or is trying to reach you. And this is all happening in a fraction of a second. And again, the call detail records list those events within those records. But essentially that's what a cell network is. The network itself is made up of different base stations, cell towers. When you make a call with your handset, it's going to look for the tower with the best signal. Typically, that tower is going to be the closest one. Sometimes that's not the case. There are different variables that go into that, weather, topography, what the traffic is around the area. But different things go into that. But it's wanting to communicate with the tower that has the most efficient or best signal for that interaction.
Now, we often will see a tower, maybe as we're driving by on a building or on a pole of some type. Does each cell phone company own its own individual towers, or do they sometimes share the same towers?
They will share. Sometimes they'll share the towers. They'll lease. Different companies or organizations will own the actual physical tower. But on that tower, you might have Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, Cricket, those different layers of antenna on that same physical pole. So you might have one physical tower, but multiple carriers on that tower.
And do the call detailed records include with the information from the phone company as to where their towers are located?
That's correct.
And is that done with GPS coordinates?
Yes, they are. Yes, ma'am.
Now, is any information provided that lets you to have a more detailed information about where a person may be on which side of a tower?
Yes, so each tower is broken up into sectors. So you might have, if you think of a clock face or a pie at Thanksgiving, it's broken up, each tower is broken up for the most part into 3 separate sections. You have Sector 1, Sector 2, and Sector 3. Each section of those will cover about 120-degree radius out. So if you look at the records and it's communicating, this handset during this event began the communication with Tower 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was Sector 1, then we know from the records, and the phone companies give one, they give a explanation on how to read these records, but they'll also give a tower list as to what azimuth or direction that sector is facing. Each sector will have a direction or an azimuth beam. If you look at a compass and sector 1 has a 0-degree azimuth, it is facing due north. The direction of that antenna or that sector is north, and it'll radiate to each side 60 degrees to encompass a 120-degree area. We don't want to limit and you'll see with the report, you'll see the pie chart. It's not to say that the cell phone is specifically only in that, but the report reflects that it is the handset during that event is communicating with that face of the tower during that time. It might be outside of that, it might extend further, but all I'm saying in the report is that that cell tower or that handset is communicating with this face at this particular time.
Now, did you actually receive a request by Detective Joshua Hill with the Madison Precinct to examine in particular 4 different phone numbers that were each from a separate, different type of phone carrier?
That's correct.
And what phone numbers or from what carriers were you asked to examine?
So 615-606-4119 was a T-Mobile device. 615-766-6229 was a Cricket device. 615-969-8332 was a Verizon device. And 615-268-5339 was an AT&T device.
Now, when you did your examination of these particular records, did you compile a case summary and analysis
I did,
report?
yes, ma'am.
I mean, and do you have your own specific tracking number that you use for your report?
I do.
And what tracking number was used in this case?
It was 2018 when I did the report, so it would be 18-004.
This item? Do you recognize that report that's been handed to you?
I do.
And what is that?
This is my call detail record analysis report that I completed on those 4 phone numbers.
At this time, we'd ask that the call detail report be introduced as an exhibit.
All right.
We'd ask the commission to publish what is, I believe, exhibit number 65.
It is.
Can you please explain this section of the report?
So it just a real brief request summary that Detective Hill made when he made it. The 4 phone numbers that I mentioned earlier, the carrier, the subscriber name of that person listing on the billing statement. That might not necessarily be the person who actually used the device. That's just who the carrier has listed as the person who is the billing address or the subscriber name, and the date range of the records that I received. Usually when you ask for records from the phone companies, you will ask for a 2-week, 3-week, a month, or longer time range to do your analysis. And that's what the date range provided. That's what I received from Detective Hill. The next section.
This next section, what are you outlining here?
So again, I mentioned that the records come in electronic format. These are the actual file names that I received for each phone number. And again, it's T-Mobile. It just lists the names of the actual files that I received and that I looked at.
Now, these next few pages, are these, does this cover much of the information that you've been explaining to the ladies and gentlemen?
That's correct. It just goes into more detail about what I've briefly discussed. That's correct.
Can you describe what you're showing in this particular?
So these are 2 locations that I was asked to plot out on a map for Detective Hill, along with the cell towers in this general area. One of the locations was 1229 Old Dickerson Pike, Lot C2, which was, I was advised, was the crime scene. And then 3458 Dickerson Pike in Nashville, Tennessee, the Walmart on Dickerson Pike. The program that we use, GeoTime, ingests all this data and makes it visibly, it puts it out in a visible format so we can look at and kind of make sense of all the numbers and things that we get from the carrier. But GeoTime uses ArcGIS, which is a mapping software program, in the background as its mapping software.
So your particular software that is used in making this analysis will create this type of exhibit when you put the data in?
Correct.
Why are there's so many different colors on the dots signifying cell towers?
So in a cellular network, I've listed Verizon, T-Mobile. AT&T and Cricket uses the same towers. They're using the same network. So basically we've got three: Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Cricket. So the different colors, the different colored dots just show the different towers, the carriers that are out there. If you'll notice, again, in more rural areas, these dots, the cell towers are more spread out because there's less customers. Cell phone companies know that in rural areas, not as many customers, we don't need as many towers. In more city environments, like downtown Nashville, you'll have, because population increases, the tower numbers will increase. So you kind of see that here. As you move closer to downtown Nashville, there are more towers.
Moving on to the next page, is this just a section going through kind of what you've been describing to the ladies?
Yes, just the software that we use, the firmware, or the version that we're using, and then just kind of go into more detail of what I'm doing when I take in these records. And then the CDR analysis section, paragraph, is what I received and what specific time frame I was asked to focus on. And this was from 3 p.m. To 8 p.m. on the 10th. I look at all the records overall and analyze those, but I'm specifically interested in 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. on the 10th of August, 2017.
What are you demonstrating here?
So in the report, how I indicate each event for T-Mobile, it will look just a visual representation of this. Again, it's just a visual representation. I am in no way saying that the cell phone is within this specific area. It can be outside of that area, extend further. As a cell tower or cell phone communicates with a cell tower, and that radio wave transmits or extends from the cell tower, it diminishes in strength. So as it travels away, it will diminish. In a city environment, we typically see that a cell phone will generally communicate with the cell tower 2 to 3 miles, maybe even 5 miles. In rural areas, going back to that rural analogy, you might see 5, 10 miles that a cell phone will communicate with a cell tower. So I'm in no ways limiting that cell phone that it's in this area. Again, I'm just simply saying that this cell tower on this particular face was communicating with this device at this particular time. So T-Mobile will be pink, AT&T will be blue, or Cricket, AT&T and Cricket will be blue, and Verizon is red. And then you'll see where I've got it pointed is the actual tower location, and again the directional face, and it radiates out.
Looking at what is on page 8 of your report, specifically figure 2, will you describe that in detail?
So this is handset 615-969-8332 on the 10th of August 2017 at 3:18 p.m. It has an outgoing voice call, and the duration is 3 minutes and 51 seconds. It's using a tower up in the Millersville area, which is north of downtown Nashville.
Can you, if I
65.
zoom in here, can you kind of show what interstate this would be near?
It's 65, so it goes up to Bowling Green this way. White House, the state line is above us. Nashville would be below us.
Going to figure 3 of your report?
Sure. So this is a different handset. Again, these are all 4 handsets within that time frame that I gave, 3 to 8 p.m., I believe. This is, if you'll zoom out so I can see just a little there. It's on at 2:58 p.m., handset 615-606-4119 makes an outgoing voice call. The duration is 5 minutes and 8 seconds. And then a little while later at 4:32, this same handset on the same day, 615-606-4119 has an incoming voice call, and it's 48 seconds, and it's routed to the handset's voicemail. And it's communicating with T-Mobile LTE site ID 27325 Sector 1.
And if I can go back just for a moment, the number 606-4119 is a T-Mobile carrier, and the subscriber billing information number is listed to a...
Roy Coons.
And where do you get the actual writing of that name?
From the provider provides documentation on who is subscribed, and I just translate it directly, however it's spelled or however it's given, from AT&T, T-Mobile, or whoever.
And hypothetically speaking, if the jury has heard a recorded statement by Roy Coons Jr. giving this same number as his phone number, you're not saying who made the call, but you would be saying that that phone number associated with Roy Coons Jr. made a call at what time on the second?
4:32 and 25 seconds p.m. 4:32 p.m. It's an incoming voice call.
And did he actually answer that phone call?
It does not appear so from the records. It was routed to voicemail.
And which direction or which sector of the tower is that call?
So it's Sector 1, which would be a northern degree azimuth facing northward. It's, again, a directional beam. And again, it would be consistent with the device being at the old Dickerson Pike address.
It would be within the 1229 Old Dickerson Pike address would be within that zone of coverage?
Correct. It would be consistent with that. Yes, ma'am.
Now turning to exhibit number 4.
So just a few minutes later at 4:39 p.m., that same device makes an outgoing voice call to 805-637-7243. I mentioned that number because it is a voicemail number. It's a voicemail retrieval, so it's a number that you would dial to check your voicemail. And the duration of that is 8 seconds. Communicating with the same physical tower, but a different sector. This time it's Sector 3. That sector points in a southerly western direction.
And with that sector that the tower is communicating with, the Old Dickerson Pride, the crime scene is not within that, consistent with being.
It would not be consistent with that. Yes, no, it would not be consistent with being at that address. It'd be more consistent with if the handset is moving, but it is not consistent with the address on the Old Dickerson Pike.
And this was at 4:39 in the afternoon?
That's correct.
Now going to what is figure number 5.
4:48 p.m. on that same date, the 615-969-8332 handset receives an incoming voice call 2 seconds in length using a tower in the Millersville, Tennessee area.
Is that a phone number associated with Drexel Cleveland?
That's correct. That's the name that I was given.
And I believe on the subscriber information, the last name is Cleveland as well.
Correct.
Is that the same tower that phone was utilizing on one of the very first?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
in between these two time periods, from the first time that the Drexel Cleveland Bowden was using a tower to this time, was there any further activity on the
No,
phone?
ma'am. No, ma'am. No tower activity.
No tower.
No tower activity.
Let me stop you there, so we can have a after lunch break, 10-minute break, okay? All right.